know you've heard this before, but I won't be before you very long. But first, I bring greetings on behalf of Savannah State University. It is certainly an honor and privilege to have this opportunity to represent and advocate for my student body, as well as other youth and young adults. But today my goal is to present to you the sense of urgency that must be given to the continuing epidemic of judicial injustices in our community.
Amen.
The theme of this meeting is prosecution versus persecution. So I want to begin by first just examining a very basic denotation of those words. Prosecution is the institution and conducting of legal proceedings against someone in respect of a criminal charge. And persecution is hostility and ill treatment, especially because of race or political or religious beliefs. So when comparing the two, we're faced with alarming amounts of instances of people being persecuted through prosecution. But before I go too deep into that, let me share some research with you. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, nationally, more than 60% of people in prison are now racial and ethnic minorities. And for black males in their 30s, 1 in every 10 is in prison or jail on any given day. Now, these trends have been intensified by the disproportionate impact of the war on drugs, in which 2/3 of all persons in prison for drug offenses are people of color. Then, when we scale that down right here in our own home to the state of Georgia, according to the Georgia Department of Corrections, out of all Georgia offenders, 61% are black. And then about 33 and some change are white, and then the rest fall into the other and unknown categories, and that's crazy. So even with understanding just the very basic what in that situation, the next big question is why? And for starters, our society is more focused on punishment than it is with actually dealing with the fundamental problems.
Amen.
And priorities have been misplaced, and not only is that affecting our community's freedom, it's taking money away from that can be used to educate our young people. Even according to an NAACP report, annually it costs $88,000 to incarcerate a juvenile, but it only costs $9,000 to educate a student. If that money was put into enhancing our education, we could already begin to reduce the rate of incarceration among colored youth, because there's a clear correlation between literacy, early childhood, mentoring, sports participation, etc., and incarceration. But as I dig deeper, I find that even with the misappropriation of funds that perpetuate imprisonment, people of color are often targeted more based on prejudices.
Amen.
For example, I work a part-time job as a server, and we have a uniform officer's discount incentive. And so I often provide service to a lot of local police officers. And there have been many times that I've heard off-the-record conversations where officers reference suspicion of a person's guilt based on their residence, physical appearance, attire, or even just a probability based on the fact that they may be related to someone who's already incarcerated. So to me, that tells me that something like economic hardships may not only affect household sustainability, but also a physical appearance of innocence or guilt for that matter. Then once the deed has been done, those same prejudged factors often influence harsher sentencing for our people as well. So I've really only raised the tip of the iceberg there, but even with that basic view of the problem, I have to start thinking about long-term effective solutions to it. And again, the proposed solution is simply education. And it's twofold, because traditional education will increase the intellectual, economic, and social gain of the individual, but also specifically educating on rights and laws that protect or may pose threats to people in low economic situations is important. An example of that approach is through nonprofit organizations like Savannah NAACP, which is founded by Ms. Beverly Trotter, and that type of organization provides intervention services that mentor, counsel, and educate underrepresented youth who have been affected by imprisonment, either personally or through a relative or friend. And the goal there is to help equip clients with tools that ultimately break the cycle of imprisonment. And even at Savannah State, in my NAACP chapter, our political action committee, just this last semester, hosted a Know Your Rights Real Talk session where we had Attorney Chadwick Mance there to provide clarity on rights and laws and answer questions about laws and given scenarios. And it's these types of initiatives that empower us as a community so that we can become informed and then demonstrate that education when put into those prejudiced situations. But to be honest, even that's not enough. We all have to assume the accountability for the fate of our community. Because the reality is that no one else is going to do it, at least not to the level that we would be. People in high positions, particularly elected officials, have to be proactive and progressive about this issue because we can invest now or we can pay later. But I assure you that later comes at a great price. We can't continue to support community leaders that are all talk and no action.
Come on now. Amen.
In addition, we have to be keen in recognizing these injustices and then identify them for what they really are. There's a fine line between racism and prejudice. Now, of course, racism is a form of prejudice, but a person doesn't necessarily have to hate a race to prejudge it. However, when a large group of policymakers, law enforcers, city officials, etc., begin to associate crime, low economic and social status, geographic location, appearance, and education level with a specific race, then we're presented with de facto racism. And that's what we have to break down. We have to erase the distorted images of our communities that are presented not only to those on the outside, but to our very own. Because a lot of times our young men and women are taught that they are subpar and second-rate citizens, and then that becomes an expectation on the outside looking in. Even in my own experience, sometimes when I communicate with people in the public, and I use a word or I talk about a subject that's at or above a post-secondary education level, they look at me like, oh, okay, scared of you? You know, and I get a pat on the back as if it was expected that I wasn't going to be educated to the level or standard.
Come on now.
But then you know what? Now that I think about it, another instance, I was speaking to a lady, and she asked me what school I attended. So I told her I went to Savannah State University, and then she gave me this look of pity, and she said, "Oh, well, how is that?" So at first I wanted to get angry, but then I thought about it, and I took a deep breath, and I said, "Well, I majored in business at Savannah State, and the College of Business Administration is AACSB accredited. Now that's the Association to Advance Collegiate Schools of Business, which is the highest level of accreditation for business schools. In fact, out of 13,000 business schools worldwide, only 5% have achieved that international merit. And some other AACSB accredited schools include Harvard, Yale, Cornell, and other Ivy League schools. So, ma'am, to answer your question, it's quite amazing. And then she looked at me with this blank smile, and she was like, "Oh, well, good for you." But that's another part of the issue. The media portrays sound bites of components in our community that distort the appearance of its true value. Then it ends up discouraging youth from even trying because the aspirations of success are overcome by fears of failure. Just a few months ago, in fact, payscale.com published its college return on investment report that listed Savannah State University as having a degree less valuable than going to college at all. And that was a big deal for me because it caused some uproar on our campus, students taking that and saying, "Well, gosh, you know, do I need to stay here? Should I transfer? Is it worth it?" Alumni who are dealing with prospective students who are now saying, "Oh, well, maybe that's not a good idea." So me being a critical thinker, I didn't believe it, but I wanted to look at the survey for myself. And according to PayScale, they acquire salary data from employees through an online survey. Now, for this study in particular, they reported to have surveyed 1.5 million people nationwide. But one of the problems is that nothing was published with respect to the sample size per student. So out of this 1.5 million, I don't know whether it was 100, 1,000, could have been more, could have been less, but we don't know because that wasn't published. In fact, nothing in the methodology supported that anything in terms of the samples used to conduct the survey was representative of any school that was listed. Now, even in a critical thinking and communication course offered at Savannah State, students learned that a representative sample should have at least 1,000 subjects. So if the survey results don't indicate that type of information, then the results should be disregarded. And also, according to WSAP, PayScale has to remove several schools from its 2013 list because it was discovered that information acquired by those schools was inaccurate. So again, how reliable is PayScale as a research entity if it has a track record for getting information wrong? And my point in sharing that is to pose the question, whose job is it to teach our youth their value and the value of our institutions, our programs, and other resources that are developed in our community? My mentor, who's here today, Dr. Jamal Sheree, taught me the African proverb that says, "Until the lion has a good story, the hunter will always need a hero." And I say that to say that we have to take charge of our young people and teach them their word so we can break the cycle of prison. It's my responsibility as a man, as a child of God, as a citizen, and particularly a man of color, to be my brother's keeper. So I challenge everyone to accept that same responsibility, to look beyond the aesthetics and examine the true intrinsic value of our culture, and then use that to combat this continuing epidemic of judicial injustice in our community. Thank you.